Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Elizabeth Cook. Breaking news from San Diego. Multiple people are dead after a plane crashed into a residential neighborhood. Our team is on the ground with the very latest there. Plus a deadly shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in D.C. We break down what we know so far in the investigation and the two young victims. Let's take a live look inside the White House press briefing, where any moment now, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt will take to that podium to answer questions from reporters. And likely to come up during that is that contentious Oval Office clash over unsupported allegations of genocide in South Africa. That happened during a face-to-face meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's go live now to CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro, who is outside the White House for us. Aaron, Caroline Leavitt likely to face questions on that meeting, specifically on that video that Trump played during that sit-down. What do you know?
Yeah, Liz, it's expected that there will be questions about that, given that there are remaining questions about the White House's characterization of what's happening in South Africa as a full-on genocide, as well as some of the images in that video. Our CBS Confirmed team took a look at one clip of that video showing white crosses on the side of the road that the White House and President Trump claimed represent white farmers, when in actuality, in this 2020 video, the protests who organized those crosses say they're supposed to represent farmers of all races. But primarily, we're also looking to see if the president has any developments, if the White House has any developments on the killings of the Israeli embassy workers last night here in Washington, D.C., looking to see if the president has been in touch with those families. We got a statement from Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu's office saying that he has spoken with President Trump, and according to the statement, the president expressed, quote, deep sorrow over the shocking murder in Washington last night. And last quick thing, the activity in Congress, the passing of that budget bill, which the president has called, quote, one big beautiful bill. Now that it goes to the Senate, does the White House have any update on how they will navigate the bill through that chamber? Are there any differences that they're expecting potentially in the actual framework of the bill or the approach from the president? All things we could hear Caroline Leavitt talk about in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, those are the headlines we're keeping our eye on. Also, Aaron, we'll be watching for reaction from that breaking news about a judge blocking President Trump's executive order to completely dismantle the education department. What do we know about that?
Yeah, this judge, primarily a federal judge appointed by former President Biden, put out this decision that it prevents the Trump administration from carrying out what's known as its reduction in force, kind of the mass layoffs of education department workers there. They also blocked the transfer of the management when it comes to federal student loans and special education functions to other agencies outside of the education department. And the judge wrote that there's no evidence that the White House, the administration, is pursuing a legislative goal to reduce this federal department. Remember, the education department was created by Congress, and law to abolish it essentially will require approval of Congress. The federal judge in this decision said there's been no evidence the White House is actually looking to do that. And the judge also added, quote, there is no evidence that the reduction in force has actually made the department more efficient. The closing of the education department, of course, has been a goal President Trump has had on the campaign trail. It's been a goal of the new education secretary, Linda McMahon, but it's also wrapped in this whole shrinking of the federal government that we've seen from the administration, and particularly the Department of Government Efficiency.
And we're keeping an eye on that press briefing room, expected to start any moment now. Aaron Navarro, thank you so much. Well, turning now to Capitol Hill in an all-nighter that led one GOP member to actually fall asleep through the big moment. Take a watch.
On this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed.
House House Speaker Mike Johnson and Republican members clearing a major hurdle there for President Trump's so-called one big beautiful bill. That bill narrowly passed in a 215 to 214 vote. Only 2 GOP members voted no. Now, the reaction to that is rolling in this morning, beginning with President Trump, who congratulated the House Speaker and House members, adding, quote, "It's time for our friends in the Senate to get to work and send this bill to my desk as soon as possible." Well, not so fast, says the opposition. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is saying, quote, "This is not one big, beautiful bill. It's ugly. There's nothing beautiful about stripping away people's health care, forcing kids to go hungry, denying communities the resources they need, and increasing poverty." So let's start there with CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small, who is live there on Capitol Hill. Torian, Democrats widely oppose this legislation. What is their reasoning?
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to what Senator Schumer said there, Liz. I want to echo what House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had to say right before the bill passed out of the House. He said, "This is one big ugly bill that House Republicans are trying to jam down the throats of American people under the cover of darkness." What he's alluding to there is the fact that this partisan massive spending bill passed through after a 24-hour plus debate. It started with a Rules Committee hearing that started at 1 a.m. And despite the pleas and demands and concerns from Democrats, Republicans were able to scrounge up the numbers to pass this through down a party line vote, mostly down a party line vote. As you indicated there earlier, Liz, there were 2 defectors in Representative Thomas Massie and Warren Davidson. There was 1 present vote in Representative Andy Harris, the Republican who also is the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, and 2 non-votes. Those were Republicans who missed the vote accidentally. According to Speaker Johnson, one of those men was unable to vote because he was asleep during this very early morning vote.
He should have had a cup of coffee there, Torian. And we know the message from President Trump's to GOP members was don't mess around with Medicaid. Lawmakers did make some changes to that bill before passing it. So what were the changes regarding Medicaid?
Yeah, pretty significant changes. What had already been telegraphed going into this vote was a matter of what work requirements would be attached to this. So 20 hours for folks who aren't with kids would have to be spent on either proving that they have a job, proving that they're volunteering, or proving that they're enrolled in school. Outside of that, the biggest concern with fiscal conservative hawks like Chip Roy of the House Freedom Caucus was whether or not those work requirements would kick in soon enough. Because of what's known as the manager's amendment, they were able to push forward that from a 2029 start date on those work requirements to a December 2026 start time. That was enough to satisfy members of the House Freedom Caucus and ultimately get the majority of them behind this as it heads to the Senate.
And it's important to note here, Torian, it's not a done deal yet. It's got to head to the Senate. Can you walk us through the math? I mean, do they have the votes in the Senate to get this to President Trump's desk?
It's unclear right now, Liz. So we've heard from some Republicans who have a bit of reservations about the bill as it's in. Some echoing what we've heard already from members of the House Freedom Caucus in the House. Seemingly some of those would be resolved, but then we're hearing from others in the Senate, like Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who says he wants to pluck out a provision that would increase the debt ceiling from this bill, make that a separate matter, and then push through 2 separate big beautiful bills instead of one big beautiful bill. Seemingly he's unhappy with the fact that this comes with a $3.8 trillion price tag, along with increasing the debt ceiling by about $4 trillion to avoid a government defaulting on their payments to the full trust in the United States credit. But ultimately here, as we work to resolve, as we being Republicans in the Senate work to resolve those differences, they have a timeline that is slowly ticking. While Leader Thune said that he wants to see a July 4th date to push this out of his chamber to the president's desk, the debt ceiling could come and within a matter of months. August, as what Secretary Bessent said, that could be a potential problem for them to hash this out. There are other Republicans who are concerned about Medicaid, and touching those safety net programs could be an issue for their constituents. They're saying that could be detrimental and kick off millions from their health care coverage. So it's something that they'll have to mull over. We have to look at the usual suspects here.
Yeah.
Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell. Any number over 3 defectors could potentially tank this bill. Leader Thune has a lot of work ahead of him.
Yeah, it's a very small margin there. All right, CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small. Thank you so much, Torian. Well, 2 Israeli embassy employees are dead after an apparent targeted attack on a Washington, D.C. street. The suspected shooter arrested at the scene. Now, in response, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered increased security at Israeli missions around the world. The victims have been identified as Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram. Lashinsky was a research assistant at the embassy. Milgram organized visits and missions to Israel. Israel's ambassador to the U.S. says Lashinsky was going to propose to Milgram in Jerusalem next week. Well, the couple was killed as they left the Capitol Jewish Museum just after 9 o'clock last night. That museum is near the FBI's field office and less than a mile from the Capitol. The agency says it is investigating the motive and the suspect's possible ties to terrorism. And that suspect has been identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago. A witness captured the chaotic scene outside the museum as Rodriguez was taken into custody. And Attorney General Pam Bondi toured the scene this morning, saying she has spoken to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about this attack, and she also condemned the violence.
Our Jewish community must feel safe. What we saw last night was disgusting. I saw a young man's body being taken away who was about to get engaged. He had an entire life in front of him, and that was taken away. The hate has got to stop, and it has to stop now.
All right, let's go out now to CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand, who is at the scene outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. Natalie, what do we know about the investigation so far?
Well, the Attorney General went on to say there that this suspect will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and we are awaiting an updated news conference that was supposed to happen a couple hours ago, really, but it's been delayed. So we'll have to wait and see the latest details on this investigation. But what we know right now is that law enforcement, CBS News has learned, is going through this suspect's social media accounts to try to learn more about his background. And there's one, obviously, there's the crime scene here in Washington, D.C., where there's a large investigative presence, but also our CBS colleagues in Chicago report that officers, agents have also been at his neighborhood in Chicago, since the suspect, Elias Rodriguez, is from Chicago. So really 2 sources of locations where police are trying to learn more. We also saw a social media post from the deputy director at the FBI, who said that the FBI is aware of certain writings allegedly authored by the suspect, saying the FBI hopes to have authenticity very soon. And Liz, you were talking about some of those witness accounts after this terrible shooting happened last night. One witness says the suspect actually entered the museum. At first, they thought that he was there for the event or needed some help. And he went on to say, quote, I did it for Gaza, according to that witness who has spoken to various news outlets. So at this point, we know the suspect has been interviewed, the investigation well underway. This is being investigated, Liz, as a hate crime.
It's such a horrible, horrible story, Natalie. These 2 people were young. They had plans to get married. I'm just curious, what has been the reaction from other leaders, both foreign and domestic, to this horrible attack?
Yeah, the ambassador to Israel, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said people in Israel are just simply devastated and shocked, especially since this happened in the United States Capitol. There's just an outpouring of grief and support and sympathy for the victims and their families. As you played in the setup clip, they were set to be engaged. A ring had been purchased, and they were going to be, he was going to propose in Jerusalem next week. We've also learned that this event that they were attending last night included a panel discussion about trying to get humanitarian aid into Gaza, different religions working together to try to help the people of Gaza. So this is just so tragic on so many levels. We know Sarah Milgram was from Kansas City area, and our affiliate there, reports she was just beloved in that community and known for her humanitarian work and trying to help people of all faiths.
Natalie Brand for us at the scene of that devastating shooting on our nation's capital. Natalie, thank you so much. Just heartbreaking there. Laura monitors here at CBS News 24/7 following breaking news throughout the country in your communities. And coming up, we're going to take you to San Diego, where a plane crashed down near a military base in a residential neighborhood. You're watching CBS News 24/7. I want to take us back to San Diego, where a small plane crashed into a neighborhood, and it has created a scene of devastation. That plane crashed into several homes this morning, killing multiple people. CBS News Los Angeles is at the scene. Let's listen in to their coverage from just moments ago.
I can't quite put words to describe what this scene looks like, but with the jet fuel going down the street and everything on fire all at once, it was pretty horrific to see.
Yeah, horrific to say the least. I mean, flames consumed an entire block of homes and cars, and residents, they were forced to flee as firefighters rushed to the scene. We do have live team coverage. Our assignment manager, Mark Blue, is tracking the latest from the desk, but let's get right to KCAL reporter Rena Nakano live in San Diego with a look at the aftermath. Rena.
Hey, good morning, you guys. I just spoke to a young mother just off camera. She told me that when she heard the explosion this morning, all she could do was grab her fanny pack and her son and run out the door. She didn't even have time to put shoes on him, but she was back out here a few moments ago because she was worried about her dog that she had to leave behind. Thankfully, the firefighters were able to find that dog. They were able to give him some water, and she will be staying at a hotel. But these are the kinds of stories that we're going to be hearing unfortunately out here in San Diego this morning, because this is a military community. That woman that we spoke to, her husband is deployed, so she was the only person who could basically save herself and her son. This, like I said, is a military housing community, considering San Diego has Navy, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps bases out here. They're also really close to the landing strip of Montgomery Airport, which is a small public airport just on the other side of the hill. So these are the families. They're used to seeing airplanes flying around, whether it's military or public or private planes out here. But of course, you would never think that it would crash land straight into your neighborhood. We spoke to a resident earlier whose home has a direct view of the plane crash. She said she woke up to her bed shaking and continuous pop sounds this morning. She lives paycheck to paycheck, being a military household, and she says she just cannot imagine the loss that her neighbors are feeling now.
I know I personally couldn't afford another car payment right now, so when I see all these vehicles, I hope that the insurance is good. I know that a bunch of us are banding together to make sure that anybody that needs anything, they'll get it from us.
Yeah, a really tight-knit military community out here. But again, this neighborhood, the two elementary schools, which house mostly military kids, they are closed today. One of them, Miller Elementary, is now an evacuation center. We also spoke to a woman who was carried out of her house on this street by some neighbors and firefighters. We will have her story coming up in the next hour. We are also awaiting for an update from FAA and the fire and police department out here. That should be coming out at 11 a.m. We'll have more information in our next hits. Live out here in the Tierra Santa community of San Diego, I'm Rena Nakano. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Rena.
Amazing to see the people in that community band together in the wake of such chaos. Again, a small plane crashed in a residential neighborhood just outside of Camp Pendleton in San Diego, which is a military base. So a lot of people who live there are military families. We talked a little bit about a dog rescue, and we're told multiple dogs were rescued from the devastated neighborhood. A reporter with CBS affiliate KFMB is there while the dogs are being cleaned up by the Humane Society. Let's listen into their coverage from just moments ago.
Was piloting the plane. We want to point that out.
Right.
I'm not sure at all who was piloting the plane. This is just the name associated
registration
with that
information.
Aircraft.
Absolutely. Yes. We know a lot of our military members have been impacted, and a lot of their pets have been impacted as a result. And our wonderful San Diego Humane Society has been taking in more than a dozen of these pets, including a mama dog that had 7 little puppies rushed to the San Diego Humane Society. Shannon Handy has been there watching them get cleaned up because, Shannon, they had jet fuel on them. Some of them so much so they had to be washed twice.
Yeah, exactly, Eric and Netta, and that's one of the reasons I'm holding the mic cord, not to drag it in this muck, as you'd say, the jet fuel, the water, the soap, but 2 of those dogs are being washed as we speak. These 2 were among a larger group of Huskies from the same home. And you can see, guys, how scared they are. They are shivering. And I can tell you when they were brought in the Humane Society truck, they were huddled together. They were so scared, not knowing what was going on. I mean, this has been obviously very traumatic for so many families who have been displaced. But these dogs, as we know, are a part of those families. And what happens, just like the 4th of July, dogs get scared when they hear loud noises, they run away. And so some of these pets were actually displaced from their homes. Some of them were taken from the owner because the owner saw the Humane Society officers around, flagged them down and said, my dogs are covered in jet fuel, and they were taken here. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We've seen over a dozen pets brought in, including the large dog you guys mentioned earlier who had 7 puppies. She was washed. Her puppies were brought to a different Humane Society campus, and those puppies, as well as their mother, are all being cared for, as are these dogs. So this is a hazmat situation. I mean, these dogs have been brought in, again, with jet fuel on them, which is why you see some of the Humane Society employees here dressed in the white outfits, making sure that they're protected from that jet fuel. But I can tell you, this is going to be a long day, not just for the first responders on the scene, but these responders. Humane Society are considered first responders. They've been driving around the neighborhood, picking up pets. And here's the process that goes along with this. They're brought in a truck, and that's considered the red zone. Then they're brought in here, which is the yellow zone, to be washed. And as soon as they're washed, they are brought into the care facility. Their pictures taken, and that's called the green zone, where they're going to be cared for and hopefully reunited with their owner. And with me now is the sergeant with the Humane Society. This is Chelsea Casperson. So Chelsea, right now the emergency response team has just been deployed. So what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so our emergency response team is a unit of 5 to 6 highly skilled, highly trained people who are approved to go behind this kind of hazmat situation. So they're going to be clearing homes. They're actually going to be going through, making sure that no animal is left behind throughout this scenario.
And I was just describing what your officers were seeing, but you were out there, you were bringing these animals in. So tell me from your perspective, when you're out there on the scene, picking up these animals, describe it.
Yeah, so I personally have not been out there yet. I am on my way out there to relieve the current sergeant who's been out there since 4:30 this morning when this incident occurred. My teams are telling me, though, it's devastating. People's homes are destroyed. Their animals are obviously terrified and having a tough time getting through this, but this is what we're here for. Flag us down on the street if you need us. We will supply you with anything that we have available, or otherwise we'll go get it for you.
And I know that you mentioned earlier inside the trucks you actually have a lot of the supplies. So if someone flagged you down because they had to leave their home immediately, what do you have on hand?
Yeah, so we've crates, dog food, cat food, leashes, maybe some harnesses or collars. The biggest thing, obviously, is they don't know what's next. So we're here if they need temporary housing. Those animals are welcomed here. Otherwise, we've got our safety net foster program, and our volunteer teams are ramping up, ready. They know we're going to see an influx of animals through this event.
Thank you so much. And you guys, this is really rare just to get this inside look. You know, we talk about all the work the Humane Society does, and here you are seeing it live on our air, on our streaming service. And look, they're getting whipped cream.
That's
wow,
great.
Is this to make
They
them more
deserve a treat.
comfortable?
Oh, I was noticing. First it was kibble,
They've
and they're
been through a
going
lot.
straight for that sweet stuff.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I'll send it back to you guys. I'll send it to you on this happy shot. I know it's been a tragic day so far, but it's nice to see these dogs are feeling a bit better because, again, these two in particular were shaking, you guys, when they came in. They were so scared. So right now, it looks like they are feeling really comfortable. And actually, what you guys saw live, this is confusing because I thought these were the same dogs. We keep seeing huskies. There were 7 huskies in one home. These are actually brand new huskies. Yeah, so, but they were all from the same home. Apparently, they're all siblings as far as we know.
Wow.
So these are actually new huskies brought in. But yeah, Eric, as you said, the siblings of them, we showed them live earlier, and they too were scared. So it looks like they're getting the best treatment, getting some treats, and we will continue to stay out here and keep you guys updated on what's going on with these pets.
And for the
Our friends are at KFMB in San Diego covering this breaking news out of this San Diego neighborhood just outside of Camp Pendleton, where a small plane crashed into that neighborhood, leaving just a path of destruction. We're told there are multiple casualties in this, and you just saw there how quickly the community jumped in to help the people who live there, help rescue their animals, help take care of them, because you can imagine this is the scene of chaos in this neighborhood in San Diego, again, after a plane crashed into that neighborhood earlier this morning. We're going to keep an eye on this breaking news out of Southern California and bring you the very latest on that. And here at CBS News 24/7, we have our eyes on the biggest stories making headlines today. Up next, the Columbia University student detained by ICE for his involvement in pro-Palestinian protests back in court today. He's also going to get to see his wife for the first time since his arrest 3 months ago. Stay with us. For the first time since his arrest in March, detained Columbia University graduate student Mahmoud Khalil will reunite with his wife. A judge granted the family visit after immigration officials refused a contact visit with his wife and newborn son. Khalil is set to meet with his attorneys and his wife any moment now, but it's unclear if the baby will also be there. A hearing on his immigration case is set to also take place right after that meeting. So let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez, who is following today's immigration cases. Camilo, surely an emotional moment prior to a critical hearing. So what's at stake today?
Well, there are 2 main cases surrounding the arrest by Immigration and Customs Enforcement of Columbia University activist Mahmoud Khalil. One is a federal district case in New Jersey surrounding the question of whether or not the Trump administration violated Mr. Khalil's free speech when it moved to arrest and detain him. His lawyers are obviously arguing that the only reason that the Trump administration targeted him from deportation was because of his protected free speech. But there's also an immigration court case in Louisiana that is more narrow in scope, and that centers on whether the administration has sufficient legal grounds to deport him from the U.S. And the judge in that case in Louisiana already decided back in April that a Secretary of Homeland Security and State Department argument that Mr. Khalil's presence in the U.S. threatens the foreign policy of the country is already sufficient grounds to deport him, but she also has to decide other motions today. One of them is whether the administration can also allege that Mr. Khalil should be deported because he allegedly committed immigration fraud. That is the second deportation ground the Trump administration has been citing. The other motion centers on an application that Mr. Khalil's lawyers have filed on his behalf to request asylum, and that is a protection from deportation that can be granted to people who could face persecution if they are deported from the U.S. So make no mistake, this is really a pivotal hearing for Mr. Khalil.
Yeah, no question. And I want to pivot to another case that you've been following. You have some reporting on migrant detainees that the Trump administration tried to deport to South Sudan. So what's the update on that?
Well, what we do know is that earlier in the week, a group of immigration lawyers told an immigration judge that the Trump administration appeared to be lining up several migrants for deportation to South Sudan. And the Department of Homeland Security later confirmed that it had placed 8 migrants on a deportation flight out of Texas, and that flight then appeared to be on its way to South Sudan. We know that the migrants are from Mexico, Vietnam, Myanmar, and other countries around the world, and so they are not citizens of South Sudan, but despite that, the administration appeared to be ready and planning to deport them to that troubled African country. However, the federal judge who was told about this case said that this deportation that appeared to be going to South Sudan would directly violate an order that he issued back in April that prevented the administration from deporting migrants to third countries without first notifying them of the destination and also allowing them to contest that deportation to a third country like South Sudan. And now that judge in Massachusetts last night has ordered the administration to give the people on this flight legal screenings to determine whether they could face persecution or other victimization in South Sudan. So it is unclear what will happen next. We understand, based on information from one U.S. official, that this plane landed in the country of Djibouti and that they are still there in that East African country. There's a military base there, actually. So that's where the migrants have been staying for now, but it is unclear whether that plane will be diverted back to the U.S.
Camila Montoyo Galvez, thank you so much for following all these stories for us. All right, let's jump the map now to New York, where rapper Kid Cudi, whose legal name is Scott Mescudi, just finished testifying in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman reports from outside that courthouse on what he told the jurors about his relationship with Combs and his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura.
Rapper Kid Cudi testified today about 2 incidents that he alleges involved Sean Combs. One was a break-in that happened at his house. This was right after Cassie Ventura said that Combs had found out she and Kid Cudi were seeing each other. There was later an incident where his car caught on fire. A Molotov cocktail was thrown into his Porsche. Combs has denied taking part in that incident, but Kid Cudi said that at the time he realized that they needed to talk. He had ended his relationship with Cassie Ventura, but they all met at the Soho house, made amends. Cudi asked him about the car at the time, and Combs denied knowing anything about it. But Kid Cudi did say that years later, Combs apologized to him. We also heard from a former personal assistant of Combs, George Kaplan, who did not want to take the stand today. He made that clear to the jury. He said that he likes Combs and only came because he was subpoenaed. But he left his employment with Combs Enterprise after seeing a couple violent incidents, one involving Cassie Ventura on Combs' private jet, and another where he said Combs was throwing green apples at another girlfriend, Gina. He said that he just didn't feel that he could be around this type of violence and decided that was the last straw, and he had to leave a job that at the time he said was the most incredible experience he'd ever had. We're also hearing from a former makeup artist to Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura today, who has also publicly said that she witnessed Combs assaulting Ventura. Back to you.
Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much. Well, our CBS News monitors keeping an eye on breaking news across the country. And coming up, we're going to take you back to the White House, where it has been another very busy week. Caroline Levitt is taking questions from reporters. Aaron Navarro is keeping an eye on that. He joins us live next. Well, you saw it here live, right here on CBS News 24/7. A tense exchange in the White House yesterday between President Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Trump confronted him over unsupported claims that white genocide is taking place in South Africa. Now, the U.S. has granted refugee status to white South Africans just weeks after signing an executive order suspending America's refugee admission program. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Pata is in Johannesburg explaining the controversy.
President Trump has ground all U.S. refugee admissions to a halt except for one group, the white Afrikaner ethnic minority that once led South Africa's brutal apartheid regime. The first group of South African refugees in America claim they've been victims of violence and discrimination. And there are many more who want to follow, who've been attending informal meetings to learn about Trump's offer. Professional hunter Dolph Grobler has already applied.
I'm worried that the genocide, which is currently mainly focused on white farmers, is going to spread.
So life was better under apartheid.
If I see yes, I can't say in my heart that we are better off now.
Claims of a white genocide are often circulated by right-wing groups, but are simply not true, said Afrikaner academic Piet Kruikamp.
There's no sign of it, never has been. In fact, whites are economically the strongest group. This is the land of milk and honey if you're white.
More than half of all farming land is owned by white South Africans, who make up just 7% of the population. And while the country has a staggeringly high crime rate, it is not racially motivated, says Afrikaner cattle farmer Nick Serfontein.
I feel safe. I sleep with my doors open here on the farm.
There are also allegations that white farmers are the victims of land expropriation without compensation. But in the 31 years since apartheid ended, there has not been a single case. Serfontein told us he's trained the next generation of more than 700 black farmers.
I'm positive. I'm extremely positive. And so are the young people in South Africa, the young farmers. They're positive. They want to be here. They want to farm.
In a country where he says the land must be shared by black and white. Deborah Patter, CBS News, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Our monitors here at CBS News 24/7 are keeping an eye on your communities across the U.S. We'll have much more coming up right here on CBS News 24/7. Our monitors now taking us to Washington, where a White House press briefing with Caroline Leavitt wrapped up just a few moments ago. A lot of things to cover today on a very busy week. One of the first questions that was asked to Caroline Leavitt was about that horrible shooting in Washington, D.C. outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. Here's what she had to say.
The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society. I spoke to the Attorney General this morning. The Department of Justice will be prosecuting the perpetrator responsible for this to the fullest extent of the law. Hatred has no place in the United States of America under President Donald Trump.
Now, Caroline Leavitt was also asked about that sit-down between the president of South Africa and President Trump, and where Trump played a video for the South African president. Take a look at those questions.
Sure. The president showed a video that he said showed more than 1,000 burial sites of white South Africans that he said were murdered. We know that that was not true and that the video wasn't showing that. So I wonder, why did the president choose to show that?
What's not true, Yamiche?
It's not true that the video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that that video showed the crosses that represent
what the president claimed.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
the fact that the video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the White House...
No, it did show that. It showed white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
Verify the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to show?
Yamiche, what's unsubstantiated about the video? The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press, of all places, has a picture of that very monument, and the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder." So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated. And that's a ridiculous line of questioning. John,
heated exchange there between Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, a reporter there at the press briefing room. Aaron Navarro now joins us. He is live outside the White House. Aaron, what else stood out to you in that press conference?
Yeah, I'll start just following that exchange when it comes to South Africa. Our CBS confirmed unit found that the issue with that specific bit of the video of those crosses is that they're meant, according to the protesters who put up those crosses, they're meant to represent all farmers who have been killed in these incidents in South Africa, not just white farmers, but as well as black and other race farmers. There was also talk of this cryptocurrency dinner in the Washington, D.C. area tonight, where essentially 220 guests that had spent the most money on the president's cryptocurrency coin will be invited to this dinner. Reporters, including our own Nancy Cordes, pressed the White House press secretary a little bit on that. Take a listen to their exchange.
The president has been asked about this. He has addressed this. I have also stated previously from this podium that the president is abiding by all conflict of interest laws that are applicable to the president. And I think everybody, the American public, believe it's absurd for anyone to insinuate that this president is profiting off of the presidency. This president was incredibly successful before giving it all up to serve our country publicly. And not only has he lost wealth, but he also almost lost his life. He has sacrificed a lot to be here, and to suggest otherwise is frankly completely absurd. Libby, go ahead.
Now, it's not uncommon for lobbyist fundraisers to kind of buy access, at least to events where the president will attend, such as fundraisers. That has happened before. What's, of course, new about this is that cryptocurrency angle that is tied directly to the president's name. And then going back real quick to Israel, the White House press secretary there, Caroline Leavitt, mentioned that the president had a call with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where they talked not only about the killings of the Israeli embassy workers in Washington, D.C. last night, but as well said that they did discuss a potential deal with Iran in regards to their nuclear weapons and stockpile, their ability to create nuclear weapons. So that was also a topic of discussion and has been something that the president has been working towards in the Middle East for at least a couple months now.
Aaron Navarro live outside the White House for us. Thanks so much, Aaron. All right, let's pivot now to weather, where you're looking at a live shot from New York City, where so much of the East Coast has been dealing with this wet weather. I want to bring in Jessica Birch to talk a little bit about where this storm is and how long it's going to last.
Well, it's the exact same storm system that brought in heavy amounts of rain, tornado activity, and of course, just severe weather widespread throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. And now that it's continuing to move off into the east, it's starting to die down, but we still have a lot of rain right around the corner. And so the next couple hours, actually, up into Boston, Rhode Island, all the way down into Long Island, too. So I want to pull up the map and show you where it's at, where it's heading. Luckily, it's starting to push offshore as we head into this Memorial Day weekend around the corner. But from now until then, we're still dealing with that severe weather up north, bringing in excessive rain for areas like most of Massachusetts, actually, and all the way over into Rhode Island, too. Take a look behind me. A couple things to mention with this as we time the storm out. We'll see heavy amounts of rain. Localized flooding is definitely possible, anywhere up to around 4 inches of rain expected in certain cities in Massachusetts as it moves its way up just along that coastline into our Friday morning forecast. By Friday afternoon, well, now we're starting to talk about a little bit of snow and snow rain mix up into areas like Maine, just along the border of Canada, as that system continues to move off into the east into our weekend forecast. So today alone, that excessive rainfall outlook highlights most of those coastal areas. We're talking about places like Boston, all the way over into Cape Cod, the whole state of Rhode Island, and they could see anywhere up to around 3 to 4 inches of rain additional from where we're at now into the next 24 hours. At the same time, we're still expecting on and off showers from Pennsylvania over into New York, and we're keeping a close eye on our friends in Texas as they're gearing up for some severe weather later today, too. Liz?
Jess, thank you so much. Well, the U.S. Senate votes to block California's phase-out of gas-powered cars. The Senate revoked 3 vehicle waivers that set stricter emission standards and federal regulations. 2 of them relate to reducing tailpipe emissions and smog pollutions. The third is what's called California's EV mandate, a rule requiring all new vehicle sales in the state be zero emissions by 2035. A judge in Massachusetts just blocked President Trump's executive order calling for the dismantling of the Department of Education. While she was at it, the Biden-appointed judge also told the administration that all fired federal employees who lost their jobs during this reduction in force from the department must be reinstated as well. And we expect to get an update on the devastating explosion at the Palm Springs Fertility Clinic that happened last weekend. The American Reproductive Centers intends to hold a press conference with the latest information on this investigation And they also plan to share their vision for how families that use that clinic can move forward with their stored embryos. The suspect in the attack was killed in that explosion, and 4 people were also injured. All right, turning our monitors back to San Diego, we are expecting to hear an update from authorities any moment now.